Awesome. Hey guys, great to have you all here. My name is Lynn Haglund. I'm originally from Norway, but Spain is my home. And now I'm actually sitting in my garden. My umbrella or my parasol collapsed just before the meeting, so I'm actually sitting inside a tree to get enough shade so I can see something on the screen today. I am the founder of Brainy Backpackers, which is a travel blog focusing on helping people to travel more responsibly, to actually think about their consequences of how they of the choices that you do, really, and to try and become better every time and learn of your mistakes, really. So that's shortly about me. I think if we all just mute ourselves, and if you have any questions, just type it into the chat and we'll try to get them answered throughout. We will start with introducing the authors, and then we will have a lot of questions for them, and then we have a book drawing, and at the end we will have time for questions, and you're free to go at 12 o'clock, but we will actually be here until 12:30 if there are more questions. So yeah, that's how it will look today. And so we're here with 4 exciting newly published authors, and they're here to talk about their personal journey and the sustainability journey, which is going to be really exciting. So we have Priyanka, Jon-Erik, Kelsey, and Jessica. And I think that you all can start introducing yourselves and what outdoors location you chose and why you chose to sit there. If you guys, you can also share where you're sitting. If you're sitting outside, it would be really cool to share it in the chat with us. So I don't know, Priyanka, if you want to start to introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name is Priyanka Surio. I'm originally from Mulberry, Florida. It's a small town in the middle of Florida. Very swampy, very rural, a lot of fields and lakes. And I moved to DC about 8 years ago. And so I'm based out of DC. And I'm the author of Third Culture Kids of the World, Exploring Sustainable Travel Mindsets. And that book is really my platform to promote myself as a sustainable travel influencer, as well as global activist. Thank you. I'm going to pass the talking stick to Jon-Erik now.
Oh, that's great. You actually have a talking stick. I like that it's not just a metaphor, but a physical thing. I'm Jon-Erik, and I'm the author of Return to Po. I am here in Seattle, Washington, where I actually grew up. And I chose, I'm in my front yard, and originally I was going to go camping, and it was going to be the first climbing trip of the season. We're going to go out to Eastern Washington, where it's nice and hot and dry. But it turns out it's been really lovely here as well. And I'm sitting in front of a blooming magnolia, and it's so vibrant that actually the flowers themselves look like they're washed out. It's just too bright, and my camera can't handle it. But I'm sort of got into this, writing this book through wanting to write about some of my experiences. It's a memoir and about my journey through conservation and adventure and exploration. And it's all within the setting of the 5 years that I lived in Hawaii and sort of what I discovered there. And really sort of my role here, or my intention with this book, is really to sort of activate our emotional systems with our relationship to the environment and sustainability. And so I really cut deep into that and centered around grief, especially in our relationship to death. And yeah, so I'm going to be hopefully talking a lot about that during this event. Oh, I gotta pass the talking stick, which I don't
yeah,
have.
you did.
But Kelsey, I'm gonna pass it to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jon-Erik. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am originally from a small town outside of Cleveland, Ohio, and have been living in Miami off and on, Miami, Florida, off and on since 2017. So I am currently at my building, but I'm sitting outside in kind of our little oasis garden area, partially because it has Wi-Fi, partially also because it is really kind of quite zen, and I'm under a tree, which is like the only shade in the garden. So it's been really nice. And my book is called Trash to Treasure. It's all about entrepreneurs that are turning trash into their products. So I kind of wanted to look at the economic side of waste and thinking about, you know, how we could both, you know, thinking from an environmental standpoint, but an economic standpoint as well, about our impact and what we can do to have larger sustainable impact through business. So, and then I'm going to pass the talking to Jessica.
Hey everybody, I'm Jessica. I am the author of Planet Now, Effective Strategies for Communicating About the Environment. I'm passionate about climate advocacy. I'm originally from Apex, North Carolina, and now I'm a student at UNC Chapel Hill studying the environment and strategic communication. And that's actually where I'm at right now. I'm out on campus in our quad. It's a nice, peaceful area. And I'm very excited to get to talk to you all about my sustainability journey. Pass it to Lynn again.
Yay, thanks guys. I think Priyanka forgot to share where she is, and I'm really sure she really wants to share that with us. So Priyanka.
I realized I had forgotten to do that. So I am actually in where my apartment complex is. It's actually a tree stump that I'm sitting on, and I have like a nice blanket like draped over it, and then there's like a nice little hill there, and yeah. So this is a nice place I like to go and meditate sometimes because the stump is so big. Sometimes I'll eat lunch here, and it's just one of my favorite places for sanctuary. Thanks, Lynn.
Awesome. Thanks, Priyanka. I think you can actually keep going because I think that the audience would like to hear all of your sustainability journey as well, because you didn't get where you are today just by chance. So if you want to start, Priyanka, by telling your sustainability journey.
Absolutely. So actually, I'm going to use some help from my book. I documented my sustainability journey in the book, as well as, you know, steps that other people can take to get to their own sustainability journey. But for me, you know, I had a vague idea of what sustainability was. And even then there were so many definitions of it to where, you know, it was really hard to pinpoint what that meant for me. And you know, regardless of that, even before I was attuned to that word, I loved traveling and I loved being able to experience new cultures. But there came a time where I was starting to think, you know, maybe I'm actually
that scared me.
Oh, if folks could go on mute. Yeah, there was a time where I was thinking, you know, maybe all this traveling is not so sustainable. It's not curbing the carbon footprint. So I thought about, you know, kind of this process about my journey and like how I would begin to feel more comfortable with traveling and also making sure that I am being mindful of my footprint and the environment. So the first step that I took in my journey was a very tactical one. I actually looked for carbon footprint calculators. And I actually found that it was kind of complicated because it required all this like documentation of my flights, my connections, my ground travel. And I hadn't really documented all that, all those details or all those nuances. So I had to kind of guess a bit in terms of like where I was and the distance. And I had to, you know, document all of that together. And even then I could be undershooting it. But I found out that over the past 4 years, I contributed 60 metric tons of CO2 in the air. And it sounds like a large number, but what does that mean? And that didn't mean much to me. I'm like, okay, 60 metric tons sounds big, but what does that mean? So to find out what that meant, I then had to kind of go to like greenhouse gas equivalencies. And I found that the Environmental Protection Agency actually has one that's pretty solid to use to give you some comparisons for what that means. And I think probably the most interesting one, I mean, there are a couple of ones, but just to name a few, I found out that my 60 metric tons equated to 13 individual vehicles driven for a year and 10 homes electricity use for a year. And then also 7.6 million smartphones charging. So I thought that was just fascinating, just the large, numbers here with this one. And then, as I was reflecting on the numbers and, I still love traveling, the next piece of my journey here was just the why and the what. Why am I traveling to a place? What am I doing there? Why will I do the things that I've planned? Why do others or the community or the culture need me to be there? And what's my purpose ultimately for traveling? And I found that my purpose really was stemmed in activism and in really supporting and standing up for the causes I care about and assisting to spread the word either by directly volunteering or engaging businesses or communities that are advocating for this. And we'll get more into activism later. And then, the third step for me was just kind of learning and experiencing the world. So after I had my purpose for why I'm traveling and, why I'm going to travel more sustainably, a lot of it was just kind of making sure that I can keep an open mind as I experience the world. And, no teacher is more impactful than firsthand experience. I also want to say that I made probably many mistakes that even I'm aware of before I became more sustainable minded. So I certainly used to be a sustainability hypocrite to some extent, and that not everything I did was sustainable. And then the fourth step for me was finding and loving myself in this journey. So knowing what I can do, what sustainable practices I can do that are easy, that come naturally, where I still have to grow, and also sharing that with others. And that's kind of my last step here that I'll leave you with is that, paying it forward. So giving you all as the audience, as the reader, as the people I interact with around the world, an opportunity to continue to carry sustainable travel mindsets forward and to engage others about your unique journey towards sustainability and environmentalism. So that's my journey in a nutshell. And I'm going to pass the talking stick to Jon-Erik.
Great, thanks. And I realized I picked a spot where the sun is now rising into my face. So sorry for my not being able to see very properly anymore. And I also have a dog with me, so I might be a little distracted. But my journey, I took very much sort of, I'm going to also use my book as a way to frame this journey. And I, from sort of an age from college onwards, had a big sort of drive and desire to be out in nature. And I was very focused, and one could even say fixated on this desire of removing myself from society and getting as far away as possible and not wanting to have anything to do with it, and feeling like all problems came from humans and everything that we've done in the past many centuries. And so that was a very sort of driver force for me in my journey. It was very much, a two-way street of wanting to get away from something, but also wanting to move towards something. And what I inevitably moved towards was this opportunity to go live and work out on a remote atoll in the middle of the Pacific Ocean to do conservation work. And this was habitat restoration work for a wildlife sanctuary island that is uninhabited by humans. It's part of a marine national monument called Papahanaumokuakea. And but it is inhabited by thousands, if not millions of species, mostly marine birds, but also other species such as the monk seals and a pod of spinner dolphins and sharks and the like. And that experience became the pinnacle of this motivation to get away. I succeeded. I really got to a point where you can't really get any further away from society. We were, on this tiny island that was, half the size of Central Park for half a year. And our only sort of connection with the outside world was satellite communication and really reduced to email. And I absolutely loved it. And I loved the way that I was able to then connect to a place, because there was none of that human sort of societal distraction, it seemed. And that's the way I sort of saw it at that point. But, as humans, we are social creatures, and it was very challenging to be isolated in that way. And I sort of came back, right, with an appreciation for human culture and communities and, my people. So that's when I sort of started to think about things a little bit more complexly and try to integrate this desire, again, to sort of disconnect from society and connect to nature, but then come back around and reconnect to the human world and bring what I've learned. And so, that's really how I kind of shaped my book. And I really got into human stories and understanding the importance that stories play in understanding this lesson and perpetuating a kind of ancient narrative that has helped structure and guide human life for, time immemorable. And I guess I'll leave it there. And, I can get a little bit more into sort of the specifics of what it is that I learned and what it is I'm trying to share. And so with that, I'll pass the stick along to Kelsey.
Wonderful. So my journey kind of starts from a young age. I grew up on a farm and was always very aware of and comfortable with, the environment around me. But then as I moved and I started traveling more, very similar to Priyanka, and realized kind of the impact that I was having. I remember walking along a beach in the Philippines and just seeing a ton of plastic trash and realizing kind of how damaging our relationship with the environment was, and wanted to figure out how can I communicate this in a way that someone who's never, experienced this would still be able to see and understand. So I kind of combined that with also my economics background of, thinking through kind of why we have money and like why currency exists and, what actual true value is, and kind of redefined what value means, and then thought about, okay, now how can I share this message and how, so for me, Trash to Treasure was really like, one, how I live my life, and then kind of thinking about how we can also like think through this in other ways. So that's kind of my journey in a nutshell. And I will pass the talking stick over to Jessica.
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey and everyone. So as I briefly mentioned, I grew up in Apex, North Carolina, and that's part of the rapidly growing Triangle region of North Carolina. And so there's a lot of clear cutting. And at the time, just like when I was younger, I felt like killing any trees was bad. Now I realize we have to kill some trees for some growth, but I was very concerned about this. And I felt kind of helpless about what you could do about the environment. But then I learned about Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, and I learned about what a huge impact it had on propelling the environmental movement forward in the United States. And so because of Silent Spring, indirectly, the Environmental Protection Agency was established. Earth Day was started, as we're now celebrating Earth Month 51 years later. And so being able to see how impactful a book was always made me want to be able to combine my passion for the environment with writing. And so that led to me being able to write my book called Planet Now: Effective Strategies for Communicating About the Environment. And I want to help other people learn how they can effectively communicate about the environment, because I think the biggest thing we can do is make waves of change and talk to the people around us and shape public opinion. And that is a way to try to make larger change by really influencing those people with a lot of power to then be able to make decisions based on that. So through my experiences in sustainability, going into different organizations, working for different organizations, I've realized how complex the movement can be and how interdisciplinary it is. And people just have so many different viewpoints that you have to be aware of. And I just think it's important to think about how you can connect with people's values and not judge them, but really just like meet them where they are when you're trying to help them understand environmental problems, but also those solutions. So I would say that's kind of my big takeaway. And with that, I will pass it back to Lynn.
Thanks, guys. It's so inspiring to hear about your journeys. And I'm thinking, like, if you can tell me how you formed an identity with the natural environment, like just so you in the audience understand, like what I mean with different identities. Could be like an activist, it could be an advocate or an influencer, or even a global citizen, or normal people that do more within their industry. So
wow.
Maybe Priyanka, if you can start again.
Absolutely. Thanks for passing the talking stick. Well, since my book really does traverse so many countries and talks about posturing yourself to be more global minded and oriented, I feel like I could pick like mostly everything you said. And if whoever's, just put everyone on mute. But yeah, I feel like I could probably identify with most things like advocate, activist, influencer, but I'll start with global citizen, because I think and especially as it relates to natural environment, I think it means like being mindful within any new place I go to, making sure that I'm not, leaving trash behind, or that I'm seeking out opportunities to recycle, or that I'm taking an opportunity to be outdoors or in nature, or to visit the national parks of that country, to make sure that I'm visiting wildlife conservation centers and not zoos. And so like for me, this has been, acting in that very responsible mind of a global citizen while I'm in these different countries, and the citizen being someone who's eco-conscious, environmentally friendly, environmentally adept at what, where you're putting your dollar, where you're visiting, what you're promoting on your platforms. And kind of the way that I'll end this for everyone here is with one line from my Global Citizen Pledge. So in the book, towards the end of the book, after you read it and you learn about sustainable travel mindsets, I have everyone, essentially sign, or, you can always add your own words in the book, and I encourage folks to do that. But basically pledge and sign this kind of global citizenry pledge of sorts. And the pledge is really a commitment to act more sustainably when you travel, and to embrace cultures, creatures, and communities of the world as a global citizen. And so the last one, I think, really sums it up very well in terms of my relationship. I am a global citizen, a mindful traveler, and a captain of my journey. And I will keep my inner compass pointed at the core of life on this planet, which is love. Love for all people, cultures, creatures, and environments. Thank you. So I'm going to pass the talking stick now to Jon-Erik.
Thanks, Priyanka. I really enjoyed that. It's like a really, doing a pledge is such a beautiful way to externalize one's commitment, to these movements and to these drives. And it's nice to hear like they really work. You put that sort of pledge out into the world, you say it out loud, and you claim it for yourself, and magic happens from that. So I love that idea. And for me, it's my identity with sustainability and environmental sustainability has really been a path towards introspection and the internal relationship that we build. And so I've really built this identity around exploring the phenomenological experience of nature. And so, with that, I've found that it takes a lot of time and effort to build a practice around that. And, our busy world doesn't afford a lot of space and time for that. you know, and often it's actually quite a privilege to have that time, to find time to connect to nature. And so, you know, my identity is really about how can I create time and space, opportunity to establish those connections and accessibility to those connections for everyone. Because I really do believe and sort of am acting from a place that, you know, if only everyone had that time, you know, the world would be a better place. We could come together and find that appreciation and unity through our identity as it pertains to the rest of the living world. And so I'm very focused on that with my, you know, movement forward and what I'm trying to attempt to do with my career. And, you know, I'm in this master's program I've sort of been in flux in and out of, which is, it's a biology of arts. And so it's to me, it's a way to bring together the arts and the sciences. I'm a huge advocate for science, and especially mindfulness, the science of mindfulness. You know, essentially to learn how we can be objective observers of our own subjective experience, right? And so I'm looking for ways to create opportunities, starting from a very early age of how we can teach mindfulness. You know, how can that be a part of the classroom setting? How can that be a part of an outdoor setting? And yeah, so using sort of the founding principles of the scientific method, especially inquiry and observation. These are sort of the starting points of our understanding of our world. And it really does begin with sitting and witnessing and watching and listening and sensing. And from there emerges, you know, curiosity, questioning, and then from there, you know, theories and ideas and imagination. And so it all sort of blooms from this place of slowing down. And so that's what I've been a huge advocate for. And then just to tie on to that, you know, this relationship between nature and death. And, you know, when I was on the atoll, I just, as though I was surrounded by so much life, and an incredible diversity. With that, I was exposed to a lot of death constantly. And that was new for me. I never really had exposure to that. I felt like I probably lived a very sheltered life, but out in nature, it's very much a part of life. And so I learned the value of having a relationship with death. And then in my memoir, you know, I had a tragedy in my life of the loss of a family member. And, you know, I began to sort of dive deep into that meditation of what it means to lose something, and sort of the gift that comes with that grief, and how that can really motivate oneself to be more connected to something by realizing the preciousness and temporality of life, and how we don't have that much time to activate and be a part of something. And so it really brings an extra value. Okay, I'll leave it at that. And I'll pass the stick along to Kelsey.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. So for me, I love the idea of being a global citizen, also having kind of experienced this journey and traveling quite a bit. That's always really resonated with me. But I kind of, my idea is kind of, you know, just in general, be a good human. I practice yoga, and there's this concept called ahimsa, meaning like no harm or doing no harm. So I always am trying to figure out not only how can I, you know, not do harm to, you know, the environment by creating trash, but, oh, John, the dog is very cute. And so not only am I trying to like think about how can I, you know, do less harm to my environment by trash and other things like that, but it's also around kind of then my relationship with, you know, items, my relationship with the planet, and then also, my relationship with other humans. And I think really kind of thinking through how all of those things interconnect. So I guess for me, I would say that I'm kind of, I don't necessarily have like one label of like, oh, I'm an environmentalist, or I'm, a feminist, or like all of those things they're labels, but they are, for me, it's all summed up in just being a good human and figuring out how to live. Brene Brown has this concept of like living wholeheartedly. And for me, that's the most important thing, is really, being myself in every room. And, yes, that means I like to talk about trash and why we need to use it differently, but it's also a lot of other things. And, I love sitting outside and being in nature, but I also still love, spending time with family and friends. And, so it's kind of working through all of that kind of mix of stuff. So yeah, and also, recognizing kind of, I am a global citizen, but I also, when I am traveling, I am often the only American or one of few Americans around me. And so recognizing kind of what that means and how I can use that better, and not necessarily kind of be the quote unquote like stereotypical American, but also thinking about like, how can I use that to understand? So that's pretty much my way of going about it. Passing the talking stick to you, Jessica.
Yeah, thanks again, Kelsey. So when I think about the different terms, I personally love the term climate advocate, but I don't think that advocate has to mean anything particularly special. I think an advocate is something that most people can be if they're just strategic in how they think about communicating about the environment. It doesn't have to be like it's your job to be out there advocating about the climate. Even though that's my personal career path, I think that it's important that anybody can figure out where in their life can they act as a good example and help other people recognize the need to try to also be advocates and be global citizens. And sometimes you can make the greatest impacts by just almost being kind of like a low-key advocate, whether you're talking to somebody who maybe is skeptical about the environment, skeptical about climate change. If they think that you're a very outspoken advocate about climate change, they're probably automatically going to dismiss what you have to say. But if they can connect with you as being somebody who maybe isn't specifically focused on communicating about the environment, then maybe they'll feel like you have less of an agenda. And so I think sometimes it's being kind of that low-key advocate that is a way to really make a difference that I don't think we always talk about. And then there are other ways that people might trust people who can act as advocates, especially like your weather people on the news. A lot of the times people will really trust what those people have to say if they're talking about different issues like climate change. And so for me, I love to strive to be an advocate. And I think that it's definitely a term though that can have a lot of meanings, and to me it's really just in trying to do what you can in those little corners of your life that you can to be able to help other people be more caring about the environment. Back to you, Lynn.
Thank you, Jessica. That's so inspiring to listen to all of you. And I think that we talked about a lot about what you can do and like what you guys do and have done, and like what I always write about too on my blog is like what mistakes we do and what we can get better at. And just so that we don't run out of time now, I would like to hear about where you guys are sustainability hypocrites, like what can you really work on and improve. But I want you to leave it with one top point. So you start, Priyanka.
Thank you for passing the stick. So yeah, I mean, this one is I think probably the most obvious one for me, is that, even after understanding the carbon footprint that I had with traveling, I don't know that I necessarily was dissuaded from traveling. So I think there were a lot more benefits for me personally that outweigh that, notwithstanding my passion for traveling and experiencing new cultures. So if I had to pick a big one, it would just be that I will continue to travel in the future. But with that said, I will mention this, wherever I can find a more sustainable way to do so, I will always try to do that. So if there's a way to get there by ship, that doesn't cost an arm and a leg and months of traveling, then I would be totally down to go by ship. If there's a way to road trip or to take a train, and by road trip, I also mean carpooling, because actually what I learned is that if you're road tripping alone, it's actually not that much different from taking a flight. Like your carbon footprint ends up equating about the same. So if you're carpooling on a road trip, or if you're taking a train, that's actually a more sustainable way of traveling around a country. And so those are types of travel modes of transportation that I think I'll be more attuned to, and continue to be attuned to even in my journey, but even more so because I know I want to keep traveling. Jon-Erik, I'm gonna pass the talking stick to you.
Yeah, traveling. Oh, that's a tough one. I definitely share that. But I'll choose another topic. I've been thinking, I love to garden and grow food. I'm actually currently a professional gardener. And so I spend a lot of time, building gardens for clients. And so, with that though, my hypocrisy is my food consumption. And especially I've been thinking a lot about meat consumption. And it's something that I'm going to put more intention and actual consciousness into, I think, moving forward, as I've been looking at a lot more of the data. And, we're trying to feed 8 billion people on this planet. And globally, meat consumption is at its highest ever. And yeah, it's projected to double by 2050. And it's one of the least sustainable acts that we do as humans on this planet is to consume meat, and regardless of our sort of morals around the consumption of animals. And so, 1 calorie of chicken, which is the most efficient meat to produce, takes about 9 calories of vegetation to grow. And so, just that number alone, that 1-to-9 ratio, indicates just how much acreage we have to devote to just feeding animals. And so, I have sort of grown up culturally in a food connoisseur sort of environment, and meat has been on the center plate of that. And I do find it delicious, but I got to move beyond sort of that innate desire and think about this from more of a global standpoint, and especially an economic standpoint. So yeah, that's my hypocrisy, and yeah, I'll pass it on. Kelsey.
Cool. Thank you, Jon-Erik. That was one big one for me a few years ago. So I've mostly switched to plant-based. It's definitely hard, but it was worth it for me. Happy to share any recipes at any point as well. Mine is water. So I'm pretty careful about a lot of other things in my life, but I don't often think, I've always been in an area where water is abundant. And, it's very easy to go and turn on the tap or take a long shower, or just not really have to conserve water. So for me, I'm really starting to think about, if I make pasta, can I use that water somewhere else instead of just throwing it down the drain? How can I take shorter showers? Just kind of being a lot more mindful of my water consumption, because it's, even though I live in Miami and we're surrounded by water, it is still very much a scarce resource. And so really thinking about my water consumption and, can I wash my clothes in a shorter cycle, or, use cold water to use less energy, that kind of thing. So really thinking about my use of water has been a major, I think where I'm probably the most hypocritical. Is water. So, and with that, I'll pass it to Jessica.
Yeah, I can relate to all of these areas, but an area that I will add where I tend to be hypocritical in terms of sustainability is with clothing. I think it can be quite challenging to find sustainable sources of clothing because a lot of the time it's all about trade-offs, and sometimes different brands can greenwash, and I'm not always sure the best way to get clothing. I think one of the go-to suggestions is to go thrifting. But then I also hear people say that, well, you shouldn't go thrifting because then you're driving up prices for people who need to use thrift stores to get any clothes. And so then I kind of get overwhelmed with the different ethical issues with the different ways that you can get clothes. I think there are a lot of different sustainable clothing websites out there. But then I think, okay, if I'm trying to import something from far away, am I really actually making a larger environmental impact from that? And so that's an area where I want to continue to increase my knowledge about how I can dress most sustainably. Lynn?
Awesome. That's so interesting to hear, because I think that's about in the same boat with most of those things, except I turned completely plant-based a few years ago. So I've actually gone away on that, which is good. But yeah, as you see, we all have things we can improve on, and it's really good when you get aware of it, because then you can actually start making changes. And it's nothing bad about having things to improve. It's actually good, because that means that you're aware of how you can become better for the environment and so on. So yeah, I think we only have a couple of minutes now to share, to wrap up really before the book giveaway. And I would like to hear from you guys, like the top things that the audience can do to be more sustainable. And I think that what you just spoke about now have already wrapped up quite a bit of it. But if you have maybe one more tip each for the audience, that would be awesome. Priyanka, your stick.
Thank you. So my tidbit here is actually applying the sustainable travel mindsets I spoke about, or that I explored in my book. And I'll outline them here really quickly. But I did a lot of research around this as someone who was traveling, and I knew that was where I was being a hypocrite in this. I did a lot of research in sustainability and a lot of research in like what seems to make sense for how you can be more sustainable. What that even consists of. And yes, there are actions that you do, but before you even get to the actions, there's a mindset that you have to adopt. And that mindset will kind of steer you in the right direction. So the 4 that I outlined in my book are finding truth. And just a quick line about that, I think you have to kind of posture yourself to go in knowing that you don't know everything, and that you may be doing it wrong, and being open to learning a new way, or, the truth about some of the practices you were doing. And you might feel bad at first, but, being forgiving of yourself and knowing, now I know better, I can do better. Open-mindedness is the second one. And I think as you learn the truth, and as you learn that, oh, wow, eating meat is actually one of the worst things I can do. Am I open to going plant-based? Or am I open to buying from thrift stores, or rather sustainable travel or sustainable clothing companies? The third one is resilience. So as you've been able to practice being more open-minded, how have you now developed your own kind of expertise in sustainability, or how have you been able to be more sustainable? Resilience is really all about growth. So it's kind of looking at, this is where I was before I started, and now this is where I am, and celebrating that, and then continuing to grow even more. And then the last one's giving back. And I think that one's probably the most self-explanatory, but it's really about how you're doing and playing your part in being more conservationist oriented, environmentally oriented, reducing your footprint on the earth. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Jon-Erik.
That's a beautiful outline, tidbits. And I especially appreciate how giving back comes at the end, because I think sometimes that can be really overwhelming, because we sort of skip ahead to that step, but there's all these other steps that come first to get to a point where we're so sort of charged up and ready to give back and have that fullness to give back. I'll just share a single sort of very specific tidbit. One thing I've learned, it's a practice of called sit spot. And, the idea is to find a spot that you can return to whenever you want, whenever you can, that's outdoors, that's in a natural setting, that has some level of, diversity of life. But it doesn't have to be, far away. In fact, it should be extremely accessible to you, something that you can walk to from your house. And it's a place that you return to specifically that spot over and over again. And, spend 10 minutes there with no distractions, right? Don't bring anything with you, just bring yourself. And if it's cold, maybe, some layers. And sit there and just soak it up. And the idea behind this practice is it's a mindfulness practice. And it's, we spend a lot of time with our loved ones, right? And we give them our attention and time. And that's how we build that relationship with those people and build those strong bonds. And, the argument here is that that's exactly what we need to do with our natural surroundings. We need to spend time with them. We need to get to know them. We need to listen to them. And so a sit spot is a perfect way to start that practice and start small and grow from there. So that's my little tidbit.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I would say I wrote a lot of my book in my sit spot, so that was useful. And it is a good way to kind of stay creative while you're trying to write and create something else. So for me, I think this is a journey. So it really doesn't matter where you start. It's just kind of a matter of get moving on the path. So just start somewhere and I think it's about really starting with what resonates most with you. So if you enjoy cooking, maybe finding, a local farmer's market or something to get your produce from, or if you enjoy, kind of just trying to improve whatever you do daily to have slightly more sustainable practices. So I always try to look though with things that I particularly enjoy, because then you're more likely to adapt and keep doing it. And then you'll add on additional habits on top of that. So it's really about doing something that's slightly more sustainable in any area. And that can also be something creative, repurposing something that's trash into something for your apartment or your house, or, just anything that really kind of gets you excited, I think is the most important thing to start with. And then you'll go along this journey. And I love how you outlined that, Priyanka, because you will always go along that journey, but it's kind of getting to those first few steps is the most important thing. So that's my thinking always. Passing it over to you, Jessica.
Yeah, so much great advice from all of you. I think for me, I would really encourage everybody to continue educating yourselves, which you're already doing just by showing up to this event. Educate those around you and join forces with other people. I think, as you were mentioning, Kelsey, figuring out different ways in your life where you can figure out how you can be more sustainable, taking a step at a time. Say that's you want to reduce your water impact. What choices can you make in your life to reduce your water impact is a way to get started. Maybe the next week you try to figure out how to dress a little bit more sustainably. And then once you figure this out, make sure that you tell people about it. It can be word of mouth. It could be actually going out there and making a podcast about it. And then you want to also really, you can make the largest environmental impact by joining forces with other people with the same goals as you. And so if you have other environmentally minded people in your life, maybe at your workplace or at your school, if you have organizations that you can join, I definitely recommend that you do that if you're not already involved. Maybe that's a local organization like your local Sierra Club chapter or Sunrise Movement chapter. I would encourage you all to do that, because then you're able to really keep connecting with people, learning from them, teaching them what you know, and being able to keep each other motivated. And together you can really create a large force that can help to inspire the changes that you're hoping to see. Back to you, Lynn.
Awesome. So much great advice here. It's really, really good. And I especially love what Kelsey says, that just start. Like, don't stress too much about where you start or what you need to do, but just start in the small, and then your journey will start rolling. So heaps of great advice. Thanks, guys. I think we are ready for the book giveaway. And Priyanka, you're going to help me a bit with that, aren't you? So we're going to do
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're going to do a random drawing of the registered participants for who gets the free book. So Priyanka can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so basically we've documented each of your names here, and we're going to be doing a random drawing where I'm going to ask Lynn to pick a number between 1 and 6. And then the first person who goes, you get to have the first preference of which author's book you'd like. And then we'll do it again, and the second person gets to pick a book, and then we'll do it 2 more times. And then the last person will get the last remaining book available. So yeah, without further ado, we're going to do that. And then if you do win, we just ask that you, drop your contact information in the chat, or we can, get in touch with you as well. And each of us as authors will ship out a paperback copy, much like this, for you to have with a special note inside. So again, appreciate you all joining. And Lynn, I'm going to have you pick a number between 1 and 6 now.
Okay, I'll start with my lucky number 3.
Okay, 3 is Elena.
Yay. Should I just
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Congrats.
thank you guys. This is awesome. I'm so glad I came. I'm actually can I get a little time to research the books a little more, or do we have to do it right now, or can I email you guys later with it?
You might miss out on your chance to pick the book you want,
Okay.
just because we'll ask the others to do that. But we could come back to you if you want us to kind of, go to the next person.
Okay. I think actually I will go with Jon-Erik's book.
Very nice. Mm-hmm. Do you want to? Yeah, that's really cool.
Oh man, I would have to. I shamelessly do not have a copy with me. I do have a dog with me though, but Alina, I will. I think we have everyone's emails who registered. So if you did register, I can contact you that way.
Yeah, please do.
Otherwise, it looks like my sister she's exclaiming that she has a copy and she can show it.
Oh. It's a very beautiful cover, I will say that. So you picked a very scenic, very aesthetic book.
Oh, there it is.
This
okay.
is the book.
Oh,
This is a good book.
Yeah.
There you have it. Praise from my own sister.
It's very beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And the cover is really beautiful. It's such a great book. Okay, I'll sign off now, but that's what you're getting.
All right, Lynn, pick another number between 1 and 6, not 3.
Okay, let's go for 1.
1 is Clavy. I think if I'm saying that correct.
Close enough. That works. Clavy.
Clavy.
Yeah. Let's see. I would like Jessica's book. I want to be an effective communicator. So if I can have your book, that'd be great. Yeah, so you guys can see me as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, excited to send it to you.
Congratulations.
Perfect. What information do I need to share? Just email, and then we can get in contact about where to send it. Does that work?
Yeah, that works great.
Perfect. I'll
Feel
send
free
it
to
out now.
put that in the chat.
If anyone else wants to send me their book too, you know, you have my email as well. So, you know, I'm not going to say no.
I love it. All right, next number.
Number 5.
Number 5 is Brooke.
Congrats.
Or maybe it's Brooke and I think I remember seeing Caitlin in the chat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm super excited. I'm sitting here with my housemates and we're all so excited.
Oh, this is awesome. It's a party over there. So which book?
Let's see. I'm here to support Jessica, so I would love a copy of Jessica's book. But I'm like super happy that I got to hear from all of you as well. This has been great.
Jessica, that's kind of up to you as the author if you're open to giving 2 books away.
Sorry, I was having trouble hitting the unmute button on here for some reason. But anyway, yes, I am happy to give another book to Brooke and your housemates. Hey, everyone.
All right. Lynn, we'll pick another one.
Let's go for number 2 then.
Regina, which actually I don't know if she's on anymore.
Oh yeah, Regina had to leave early because she's volunteering for a water quality test in a park near her house.
Oh wow,
that's a good cause. That's a good reason for not being here.
That is a good reason. That is a good reason. Okay,
but yeah, if you want to choose another number,
we'll choose another number.
Okay, number 4 then.
Number 4 is
you haven't
Josephine.
taken number 4, right?
No, you haven't, Josephine.
Hey, hi. Hi. Okay, I think that I would like Priyanka's book on traveling. I know that there's 2 books on traveling. I think Lynn's kind of similar, but yes, that.
Yes, it will be. This is the copy you'll get. So
great.
I will send it to you. Awesome.
Thank you. This is
great.
Congratulations.
Thanks,
yeah. Never
all of you.
This is awesome. Thank you. I'll put my info in the chat. Or
yep, you can, unless you registered, then I can just like reach out to you directly. And then if I can't get in touch with you, I can always bother Jon-Erik for your info.
Yeah, I registered, so you can find me that way.
Perfect. That's what I'll do, and I'll ship it out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome.
I think we have one. We can do one more number between 1 and 6. And you picked. I mean, there's like just one more number.
Number 5.
There's one more person and one more book.
It's 6. Yeah. So 6 is Jane.
Hello. It's actually kind of funny. So I'm actually with Jessica right now. So we're a little echoey. But yeah, I'm happy to take whichever one is left.
That would be Trash to Treasure.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll send it right over.
That is so awesome. All right, guys. Well, I think we're done with the book giveaway. And Lynn, if you could just kind of wrap us up.
Yes. So as I mentioned before, like now it's already done an hour. So I totally understand if anyone has to leave, but if anyone has any questions for the authors, just write them in the chat and they'll be happy to answer. Any questions?
Thank you, everyone, so much
Be
for
about
joining.
the writing journeys. If you have any questions about your books or anything to the topics that we've been talking about today, it can be anything really. Give you a few moments to see if anyone writes. Yeah.
Oh, so Priyanka, I'm curious, or all of y'all, I think there's someone else that did travel too. Like, I'm curious if you want to tell us about a journey or a travel experience you had where you just felt really proud of yourself for putting into action this new thing you were trying about being sustainable and being mindful about the impact you were having on the world when you traveled. Like, do you have a memory of a specific time or a place you went to where you're like, yes, I'm doing it, I'm practicing this and putting it into action and it's feeling really good?
I do actually. So I don't know if we have enough time for this, but it is in my book. It's in the chapter on global citizen, your role in sustainability. That's the title of the chapter. And it's about one of the world-changing forces. So I mentioned the mindsets, but you'll also learn about the 4 world-changing forces that make up a formula for sustainable travel. And one of those is protecting wildlife and biodiversity. And with this one, I was in Ethiopia in Africa, and I wanted to see this forest. It's called the Suba-Menegesha Park and Forest. And like that forest is known for its wildlife. And I was hoping that I'd be able to go there and do like a safari tour, not unlike the ones in like Kenya and Tanzania. But it was more nuanced because like Ethiopia has just a different climate and topography. So I was excited to see that. But no one really knew where it was. There's not a lot of like routes or directions about where this is. You just kind of happen upon it. So after an hour of driving, we weren't able to find it. So then my driver ends up stopping at this other place as we're driving that has like a bunch of young men kind of standing out in front of a gate. And you can kind of see a bunch of like trees and like other things in the background that they're guarding. And she's asking them where this park is, where this like national forest and park is. And they don't really know. They're like, we think you're kind of far away from that place that you're describing. But, you know, we have a wildlife conservation center here that we're standing up. It's not technically open to the public, but if, you know, your patron wants to see it, then we can give her a tour. And it ended up being one of the most like amazing things I experienced in Ethiopia, honestly. You know, they're like one of the most meaningful stories, I think, was a lion that these men had saved. This lion was blind and deaf, and it was really struggling out in the wild. It lost so much weight. And some poachers had captured it and abused it, and then, you know, left it out to die. And so they essentially rescued this lion, and they rehabilitated the lion. And it will be difficult for the lion to go back out and to, you know, engage naturally in its environment because it is blind and deaf, but they do provide this very large space for the lion to roam. And they were able to bring a lioness that they showed us that they also were able to rehabilitate. They're thinking about potentially at the time, you know, introducing them to each other, allowing them to mate in that way so that the lion isn't so lonely. But honestly, it was really one of the most beautiful stories ever. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Awesome story, Priyanka. That's so powerful, really.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Sorry, what did I miss?
I actually have a question. Yes, I have a question for you, Jon-Erik, because your sister asked me. So she had asked me like one like memory or story that really stood out to me, where I was able to practice sustainability. I'm going to ask you the same because I know I feel like your book has so many of stories like that. So what's your like top or most memorable story at the moment?
Yeah. I'll choose one right straight out of my book. Working on the atoll. So, you know, I was part of a small team of about 5 other conservationists, and we were in charge of really mitigating this habitat on this island. And our main sort of objective was for the albatross colony. And so we had on this particular atoll, there's about 30 to 50,000 albatross. And this is a particular species called the Laysan albatross, or moli. And, you know, we I was there for the summer season. There's a winter season and a summer season. And, you know, depending on what season you are on this atoll, you get to sort of observe a different or specific life cycle of the albatross. And the summer is very much a time of sort of activation, right? It's the young chicks that hatch, you know, in December are being sat on and kept warm because they can't thermoregulate on their own, and are fed by their parents who go out and forage on the ocean day after day and bring them food and water. And by the time we get there in the sort of beginning of the spring, these albatross have gotten you know, they're starting to get really fluffy, and they have their feathers are starting to come in, and they're growing rapidly. But at the same time, the parents are becoming more and more fatigued because of how they have to go further and further out into the ocean to find food. And that's just sort of the natural cycle of resources that occur. And, you know, by the time it hits the summer, the parents are at their wits' end, probably both emotionally and physically, and especially the most inexperienced parents that have a harder time. And a lot of the times the parents, you know, they're starving to feed their chicks, and some aren't able to do it the whole season, and they have to leave, and they have to abandon their chicks. And, you know, this is something that we watch happen on a very sort of deep and intimate level. And we see a lot of chicks that are just waiting to be fed again, and they have no idea, you know, if they're going to get fed again. And sometimes you see birds, albatross parents that, you know, if their chick doesn't make it, they will adopt another chick. And it's quite sort of, there's a lot of dismay, but also a lot of hope that comes with living in a bird colony. And, you know, we were having a particularly hard season because it was a lot hotter and a lot drier, and there wasn't a lot of rain, and that made it very hard for both the parents and the chicks. And I think that one thing that I really learned that season was, you know, even though we had a very sort of low count at the end of the year, we monitored the population to see if it's growing or declining over years. And we had a pretty low count of success rate of chicks fledging. And that means that they're able to get to a stage where they can fly off of the island and actually survive into adulthood. And sort of tangent, albatross have a sort of a beautiful stage of their adolescence, we'll call it, in which they wander the ocean in solitude, and they'll do that for up to 6 years. And albatross, you know, they're incredible birds with huge 6-foot wingspans, and they won't even land on the ocean during that time. They actually sleep in the air. So it's just an incredible species, but, you know, they have to make it off of the island, and they have to do that on their own. No one's gonna help them. But again, I guess the lesson I learned from that was watching all this death was also just how resilient life is. You know, I couldn't believe how much a single albatross chick had to go through just to get to their adolescence. And that in its own is how I really sort of came to this realization of appreciation for life. And I don't think I've ever taken it for granted ever since. You know, if a single albatross chick can go through it and make it, you know, then, you know, so can I. That's it.
Thanks for sharing that, Jon-Erik.
That was so beautiful.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, any more questions from anyone?
I had to move out of the sun. It got too strong.
It's actually gotten quite sunny here. I know I started kind of dark, and now the sun is directly in my face, but it's nice. It's a little warmer.
hard to see and see on the screen when the sun shines, isn't it? Yeah, I don't know if there's no more questions. I think that we can wrap up for today. The winners of the books will be contacted by email, as mentioned before. And yeah, so I'm just going to see that there's no more questions here. No more questions. So thank you so much for everyone that joined today. It's been really inspiring to listen to all of you guys. I definitely have taken a lot with me today, and I hope that the rest of you have as well. So yeah, enjoy the rest of the weekend. Bye.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lynn, for moderating. You were awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.